when we start a drawing, the first thing we want to do is take our paper and tape it down to the desk. So we are going to be using a straight edge rather than a parallel bar. So we're going to just tape the paper down, and then we'll just adjust the position of the straight edge to line up with the lines on the parallel bar. Starting with tape. Generally, it's good to tape down all four corners of your sheet, and often it's smart also to tape in the bottom, because sometimes you pull your tools down and when you slide them back up, sometimes they may catch the edge of the paper. So you can add tape anywhere as many times as you like. So the border that we're going to be using, we're going to be drawing around all four sides of the page. So the measurement we're going to do, we'll start measuring from the edge of the paper, and on the top and the bottom and the right side, we're going to use a 1/4 inch margin between the edge of the paper and our border. And on the left side, we're going to measure 1 inch, because the reason that it's bigger here is that if you have a set of drawings, often they will get stapled down the left side, and when you have a wider margin, when you open the set of drawings, you'll still have the border in front of the staple, so you'll always have that border. So we'll begin by just simply taking our regular ruler, and we're going to measure from the edge of the paper down a 1/4 inch. On the left side, right side, 1/4 inch. Bottom, 1/4 inch. And on the left side, we'll measure 1 inch. Now, I don't know if you can tell yet, but because the grid paper may not have the grid in the space that we're in, the dimensions that we are using, probably your lines won't line up with anything on your grid paper, and we're just going to move our tools up and make sure that our tools are parallel to the lines, and that's the only way we're going to make sure that we get those lines where we want them. And I'm going to start with the 2 horizontal lines, and I'll draw them as guidelines. Then I'll know where to stop and start the vertical lines on either side. So I'm just going to do a light guideline, keeping still the straight edge on the bottom. And if the tape is in the way, you can draw the line and then relocate the tape afterward. Guideline across the bottom. Then I'm going to use the longest triangle that I have, and I will draw a line that is the right length that begins at the bottom guideline. And I might draw it a little bit darker than I did the other ones, just so I can see and distinguish my pencil line from the grid behind it. So I'm drawing that line up, and then I will come to the other side, and if I have to flip, I have to line up my parallel, my my straight edge with the edge of, with the parallel lines on the paper. So I'll move my triangle the other way if I don't have enough length. Make sure you hold your straight edge still, and then I can draw that line, and I'll stop it at the bottom line. And I can move this up a little bit if I need to, so that I can continue this line up to the top guideline. Then I will bring this up, and I will draw the horizontal line. Make sure you line it up. Now I'm going to draw the top line. And starting and stopping in the corners, so you get nice sharp corners. And down at the bottom, I'm lining it up with the grid and the line I had drawn before, my guideline. And again, pay attention to the position of my hand, that I'm keeping my pencil at the same angle, so the pencil point doesn't slide under or go away from the straight edge. So now I have the 4 sides of my border. Now the next thing to add to the ground of the workspace of our sheet is the title block. And in our case, we have a title block that's going to run the full width between the borders. And the height of that title block is 7/8 of an inch. So it's not quite 1 inch. So I'm going to measure 7/8, and I'm going to now draw a line across the entire length of this page, and that's the top of our title block. So now we have this wide rectangle at the bottom, and I might darken up the line again, the border, just so I can see it a little better. So that's the zone that has the title block. So now we're going to create sections within our title block to put different information. So we're going to measure, each section is 5 1/4 inches wide. So I'm going to measure from the border here, 5 1/4. I can either move my scale or mark 10 1/2, but I'll just move my scale so again you can see it's 5 1/4, and the remaining space here should be about 5 1/4. So now I'm going to take my triangle and I'm going to draw vertical lines, because those are the 3 zones of our title block. So I'm going to draw a line here, and a line here. So those are 3 equal zones. And then, so we also are going to be putting our drawing number on the lower right corner. That's the typical place a drawing number would be, somewhere on the lower right corner of your sheet. So I'm going to measure, we'll make the space for our sheet number 1 1/4 inches wide. And then line that up so it's parallel to the lines on my page. And then I'm going to draw. So we have 3 zones that we'll be able to put content in, and this 4th zone is for the sheet number. So the first space is we're going to have 1 single box. In the second box, we're going to have 2 equal height spaces to put different information. So since the overall height is 7/8 of an inch. By the way, I keep a little piece of paper next to me so I can take notes or write things down. And I have to find half of 7/8 of an inch to find the center between, the center of that space. So if I have 7/8, to find half of 7/8, you multiply it by 1/2, which equals 7/16. So I come to my scale and I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that is the center of the height of this zone. And then we're going to place a line right there. And we're going to divide the second box into 2 sections. So it may be that your pencil lines are not exactly parallel, but do your best to make sure that when you are working that all of your lines are staying parallel to the grid on the paper. So we've got the second section. We've got the numbers are going to be filling the entire box. In this third box, though, we want to have 3 lines of text, 3 different zones of information. And 7/8 of an inch is not so easy to divide by 3, because if you multiply it by 1/3 instead of 1/2, you get a denominator that would be in 24ths, and our scale and our ruler are not set up to work that way. So there's a really fun trick, and we're going to learn this really fun trick. So what you're going to do is you're going to find one side of your scale that may have larger spaces. For instance, I see these spaces. This is the 3/8 inch scale. 3/4 at one end, 3/8 at the other. If I tilt my scale on an angle and I put 1 mark at the bottom line and change the angle of this scale so that at the top line it goes through another mark, then I can draw a really light guideline. I can mark the 2 spaces in between along that. And where I measured along there, that's the position that divides this 7/8 inch box into 3 equal spaces. So I now can draw my line going through this point that I measured, and then I can pull my scale, my straight edge down, and I've got the second line. So now I have all of the zones of our title block. And now we'll talk about the content of what actually goes in the title block and how large the lettering is going to be. Well, this only has numbers in it, or it may be 1A, 2A, but it's the drawing number. And in this space, we're going to make the drawing number 1/2 inch tall. So we can take our ruler. We already know that half of 7/8 is 7/16, which is here. And if we want 1/2 inch tall letters, we go 1/4 of an inch up and 1/4 of an inch down. And we're going to draw guidelines inside that box. So when we do our lettering, we know how tall the letters can be inside the box. So it may be a little hard to see, but very, very light lines, because when you do lettering, you don't want the lines to be visible because it's going to interfere with reading the text. So we want to make sure that the guidelines are really light and only really visible when you lean over to look at your drawing. And the rest of the lines should be darker. So the information that goes in a title block, we already talked about the drawing number. When you're working in an office, generally the office name and perhaps contact information, the address, phone number, or what have you. So this large box is going to be our office information. And in our case, our office is the New York School of Interior Design. So that's what the content we're going to put here. Our office name, New York School of Interior Design. One of the other things that's always on a drawing is the name of the project. So in our case, basic drafting is the name of the project. We may have 10 or 12 sheets of drawings ultimately, but the overall project is basic drawing. So the project name is going to go in this top box. And then the drawing name. So this may be, whether it's a plan or an elevation, it would say whatever kind of drawing you're doing would go in here, the name of the drawing. The other information that we always have in a drawing are the date, the scale of the drawing, and who's drawn it. So it will always say date, scale, and drawn by, . So you would put the date of when you do the drawing, or offices have their own standards of what information or when they want you to put the date in. The scale of the drawing would always be something we put in here. So if it's a full scale drawing, you would write full scale. If it's 1/2 inch equals a foot, you would put that in. So depending on what the drawing is, that's what would be in here. And then drawn by is where you would put your name. So if anyone has a question in an office setting, if they have a question, they can come to you because they'll know who made the drawing. So now the size of the lettering that goes in each box. I'm going to start with the office name or the school name. And because we have a 7/8 inch tall box, we're going to use 1/4 inch tall letters in the name of the office or the school. Also 1/4 inch tall for the name of the project and the name of the drawing. And we'll use 1/8 inch tall lettering for these other categories. So we'll start with this one. And the spacing for the lettering in 1/8 inch space, then a 1/4 inch tall letter, then an 1/8 inch space, and a 1/4 inch tall letter. So we will come in here, and again, we're going to draw guidelines. And in those guidelines is where we're going to place the text. In these second two boxes, we're also using 1/4 inch text, but these are 7/16 inch tall boxes. And actually the easiest way to get this to look right is just move your scale around so that, you know, some lines that are easy to see on the scale are equally spaced, and then you find the center of that space, and you're going to measure 1/8 of an inch up and 1/8 of an inch down from where the center line of the height of that box is. Same down below here. This is the center of the box, and I'm going to measure 1/8 inch up and 1/8 inch down. Because these are odd sizes, you don't end up with a particular size space, but we're just going to make sure that lettering is the right size. So we're going to move our parallel, keep our straight edge parallel to the lines, move them carefully. So we now have guidelines for the position of the words that are going to go in these two sections of your title block. Again, they may be hard to see because they're very light. But I'm just carefully measuring, and in here I'm going to center an 1/8 inch space centered in the height of that box, and that's going to be the position for the lettering, the 1/8 inch tall lettering in those three boxes. Oops, went too low. So we now have all of the horizontal guidelines that we'll use for the height of the letters. By the way, lettering is not going to be reviewed in this presentation. Go to exercise 1, and in that presentation we'll do the practice lettering, and I'll show you how to draw the letters. So I'm going to just put the contents in here for now, and then you can watch the other presentation to really know how to practice to get the letters the right size and shape. I also want to have a margin at the beginning of each box, so the first letter in every row of text that we write can be lined up with each other. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to use 1/4 of an inch for each box as the start for the first letter. And I'm just going to center the number in here. I don't need to draw a guideline. So I'm going to take a triangle, line up your straight edge, and I'm going to draw, pull this down a little, I'm going to draw a vertical line, also a guideline, just so I can see where I'm supposed to start my first letter in every row. So when we do lettering, I will just give you a little heads up. When we do lettering, we're going to line up the straight edge and use a triangle, hold the straight edge in place, and you can use a triangle to help you make all of the vertical lines for all of the different letters. So that's how I do it. I'll do a portion of this, of each of these, and then you'll see how the size of the lettering in each box. So it's going to say the New York School of Interior Design. So we'll start. Notice I do the angles separate and the verticals with triangle to keep all the letters nice and straight. And down here you write of interior design. This is the name of the project. Again, in our case, it's basic drafting. So this is where you would write that. Underneath here is the name of the drawing, so I'll just write name of drawing or drawing name, because this is just a demonstration for the title block. And in these boxes, we have date, scale, and drawn by. So it always will say those words. Unlike the other boxes that don't say office name, project name, the words date, scale, and drawn by with a colon afterward. All 1/8 inch tall in these narrower height, shorter height boxes. Scale. And drawn by. So you'll enter the information for those categories. And I also, once I've written drawn by, I give myself about 1/8 of an inch, and then I give myself another vertical line here, because I can begin the date here, and the scale here, and the name here, so that all of those things line up. It helps distinguish the categories. And I'm just going to write, the number 1 here. It's not truly a name of any drawing, but I'm just going to put a 1/2 inch tall, and I've got my guidelines there, so that you can see the size of the letters, the content, name of the office, and in our case it's the school, name of the project. In our case, our project is called basic drafting. The name of the drawing would go here, the date, the scale, and drawn by, and the drawing number. Now I just noticed that I went too low with the line below the guideline for my letters here. So the beauty of an eraser shield is that I can use my eraser shield and I can erase out the little bit of line that I overdrew. So even with lettering, whether it's the lines of your border or the height of a letter, you can always use your eraser shield to clean up any line. The corners here, or I've overdrawn this little line here, so I can cover the line I want to keep and erase out that extra bit of line. So that's the framework, the border, and the title block that we're going to be using for all of our drawings. So from now on, you're going to begin every drawing by drawing that border, 1/4 inch spaces on top, bottom, and right, 1 inch space on the left, and then the 7/8 inch tall title block with all of the information that belongs in a title block.